All right, everyone. I want to talk to you guys about this war that has been taking place in Sudan. You have on one side the official military of the country, led by the leader of Sudan, General Abdel Fattah al Burhan, and on the other side, you have the Rapid Support Forces, which is a very powerful and a very wealthy paramilitary organization led by Mohammed Hamdan Djalo. During this whole conflict, in the midst of this whole conflict, you have Turkey, which is extremely interested in this war because it's happening in Sudan, and Sudan used to be under Ottoman rule, and the Turks want to revive the Ottoman Empire, which means they are very interested in controlling Sudan. Back when Sudan was under the control of the dictator Omar al-Bashir, Sudan practically gave away a coastal city on the Red Sea called Swakin to the Turks. The Turks started putting a lot of heavy investment into Swakin, and they also wanted to put in place a military base. This greatly concerned the Arabs because Swakin is on the Red Sea coast of Sudan. It's right across Saudi Arabia, and specifically, it's across from Mecca, which means that if Turkey ever gets a serious foothold into Sudan, it would have direct access to Mecca. And if the Turks want to lead the Islamic world with its revived Ottoman Empire, it's going to have to control Mecca. So this whole situation greatly terrifies the Arabs because the Arabs are terrified of being taken over by the Turks, which is completely understandable. And on the other side of this whole thing, you have Russia. The Russians want to build a naval base on the Red Sea coast of Sudan, and the Turks and the Russians are in the midst of a really a proxy war in the Middle East, which has been going on for about a decade. And it wouldn't really be surprising at all to see that the Turks and the Russians are vying for power over Sudan. And I think that's, given the whole situation in the Middle East between the Turks and the Russians, this really isn't that shocking at all. And then on the other side, you have the Egyptians who support the official military of Sudan because they see it as a proxy against the Ethiopians. The Egyptians and the Ethiopians are in a dispute over the water of the Nile because the Ethiopians are nearing the completion of their hydroelectric dam, which they want to use to export electricity and boost up their economy. The Egyptians are very worried about this because, as they say, the dam would bring about water scarcity to the Egyptians. And since 90% of the people in Egypt live alongside the Nile and the entire country is completely reliant on the Nile River, this would devastate Egypt. And so there are really only two options for the Egyptians, and that is either to have some sort of a compromise with the Ethiopians or to go to war. And if no compromise is made, if there is no willingness to have some sort of compromise, and the Ethiopians are so dead set on this damn project, then the Egyptians would have really no other choice but to go to war against the Ethiopians. This is why they are supporting the official military of Sudan, because they see Sudan, the official military of Sudan, not the paramilitary organization that is fighting against the government, but the official military, as a proxy against the Ethiopians. Also, the Sudanese are in a water dispute with the Ethiopians. It's over the same reason. The Sudanese do not want this dam because they're also heavily reliant on the Nile River. So it wouldn't be surprising to see in the future the Egyptians and the Sudanese forming a military alliance against the Ethiopians to crush their dam aspiration. Let's also not forget that there are tensions between the Egyptians and the Turks. Egypt was once ruled by a Muslim Brotherhood leader by the name of Mohammed Morsi, who was an ally to Turkey. There was a military coup, and the military overthrew Morsi and replaced him with Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who is an ally to the Russians. So the Turks do not like al-Sisi because he is a Russian ally and he is not part of the Turkish-backed Muslim Brotherhood. So the proxy war in Africa between Turkey and Russia also heavily involves Egypt. And the Turks want to control Egypt. They want to take over Egypt. So you have the Russians versus the Turks in Sudan. You also have the Ethiopians versus the Egyptians. And the Egyptians are backing the Sudanese against the Ethiopians. And then, of course, you have the actual civil war between the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, and the official military of Sudan. Be prepared to see in the future Africa being a major point of contention between outside powers, between the Turks and the Russians, between um, even European powers, maybe. It actually happened in the past. You had the Germans versus the French, who were in a struggle over Morocco. So in the past, Western powers fought over Africa, and today we see major powers like Turkey and Russia wanting to have uh, a huge foothold in Africa. And with the case of the Turks, they want to revive their empire, which, in their own envisioning, would encompass Sudan. So, what's going to blow up in the future is really going what's going to blow up in the future is going to be really surreal for us, because we're so lost in our own current way of thinking that we really can't imagine the struggles of the past, the imperialist struggles of the past, coming back again. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.